Unlock the secrets of franchising success with the Franchise Life podcast. Hosted by Stacie Shannon. Join us for expert insights, success stories, and practical tips every week. Subscribe now and take your franchise journey to the next level.
Hello and welcome to the Franchise Life. Today we have Dwayne Tanner, who is the Vice President of Franchise Development for the Belfor Franchise Group. Welcome, Dwayne.
I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for welcoming me.
Absolutely. All right. So, this is usually I focus on single brands in my podcast, but I really love what the Belfor Group or Franchise Group brings to the table in support of all your franchise brands. So we're going to kind of turn the tables today and really focus at a high level on Belfor Franchise Group, what sets you apart, what value you bring. And then I would love for you to highlight some of your 14 franchise brands that you have under this umbrella. So to get started, just give us a high-level overview of what the Belfor Franchise Group is and what sets you apart from other networks similar to yours.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think one of the biggest things that really separates us from others who might be in the same home services space is the fact that we're owned by Belfor Property Restoration. They're the world's largest property restoration company, around $3 billion in sales. And they're here in the U.S. and I think about 30 countries around the world. But what they provide for us really is that notion around operations. We're the only franchise company in this space really that has at its core really operations being what we do and we do best. So able to sort of filter that down to us at the Belfor Franchise Group level. And then for Belfor Franchise Group, we're a family of 14 home services brands focused primarily on sort of property restoration, everything from fully committed, taking a phone call at 1 o'clock in the morning to some of them more 9 to 5-ish in terms of their space. But there's great synergies between the brands that we've been able to acquire over the last several years and great opportunities for growth.
So 14 different brands. I mean, that's quite a bit to handle. What type of support do you bring to your franchise owners? So, anything from the moment they sign that franchise agreement and they're getting ready to do onboarding, training, launching their business and so forth.
Wow, it's a bunch that we do for these franchisees to really set them up for success longer term. I'd say the first piece starts with our Kickstart or our Quick Start program, called two different things, but it's really around getting the franchisee really set up for business. There are a lot of things that happen before someone actually attends training, right? Everything from getting your DBA together to getting registered within the cities or the states, and just a lot of things that go on in the course of putting together a business and getting it ready to launch. Once those things are done, then we have more formal training at our headquarters in Ann Arbor, Michigan, that'll last, given the brand, between 5 days and about 2 weeks or so in terms of time. And then post that, for all of our brands, we provide a Kickstart marketing program where we're going to spend alongside the franchisee, get them set up on Google and Meta and all these other places. So get their website established. So they really have a solid backing to start growing their business. And then once they're open, and the completed training and then through that Quick Start program, we have ongoing support for them from an operational perspective, from an ongoing training perspective, and certainly from a marketing perspective to make certain that they are able to leverage the learnings that we have from the over 3,000 franchises across the Belfor Franchise Group network.
And for your marketing, do you guys have a marketing agency per se in-house, or is that outsourced?
Yeah, so we have an in-house marketing group, if you will, that handles everything from assistance with franchise, lead generation to preparing templates, setting up campaigns, and even for some of our brands, some of the efforts around, sort of national advertising to grow brand awareness in general.
So with 14 different franchise brands, you have to have hundreds of franchise owners within your system. So in your role as the Vice President of Franchise Development, what does your ideal franchise owner look like? What is their background? What attributes do they bring to the table? I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah, so I think, having 14 different brands, the good news is we probably have a brand for just about everyone, right? Our brands require different levels of financial investment, right? Everything from around $70,000 to start up to over $1 million in brands. Our $70,000 brands more like the Patch Boys. So if you can imagine a restoration space, there's a hole in the wall, and we have to get that fixed. Patch Boys handles that. On the higher end is a brand called Cool Binz. And Cool Binz, if you can imagine, is sort of refrigerated storage on the go, right? So they have pods of sorts that are out there that are able to refrigerate or be office space or whatever the case might be. And that investment might be, a little over $1 million. So the financial component varies all over the place. In terms of experience, I think the one thing that may be sort of a common thread among all of them is having a servant heart, right? So we're meeting a lot of these consumers, our franchisees are, at one of their worst moments, right? So they have been through some kind of a storm or catastrophe, and it's our job to help them recover, to make their days better. So having a servant heart oftentimes helps in some of those situations. A second common component might be just grit. There's it's not easy starting a business, as you know, right? So having someone who's, hit some rough patches and made it through and saw the better part of the other side oftentimes helps making through the bumps you'll see in terms of business ownership. So those would be probably two commonalities among the franchisees that we try and sort of work our way through in our conversations with them.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned grit. Business ownership is not for the faint of heart by any stretch of the imagination. I've owned several businesses myself, and, there's peaks and valleys, just like there is in anything else in life. But at the end of the day, it is very rewarding. And, you mentioned a servant's heart also. I hadn't ever thought of it from that perspective, but many of your brands, and really home improvement brands just across the board, you really are dealing with the public, the consumer. You're going into their home, and if it's not an improvement like a renovation that's by their choice, it really is caused by some sort of damage that was unplanned. And so I love that how you mentioned the servant's heart.
Yeah, it's an important piece, right? So, the third role of our franchisees is that of a sales and marketing person, right? So taking the servant's heart, making sure they're able to communicate what we can do to help and securing that piece of business is oftentimes important.
So as Belfor has grown over the years, adding new brands, how do you guys choose or identify brands to add to your portfolio?
That's going to be well above my pay grade of all the elements that are part of that. But I will tell you, it's somewhat focused on the home services side of things, right? So we want to be able to whatever need there may be in the home to satisfy that need, right? Whether it's carpet cleaning, it's a plumbing job, or it's cleaning your air ducts. We want to be able to provide that service to the consumers. I'd say the second piece is about the founders of these businesses, right? So we're looking for folks who have been there, have gone through things, and have built a brand and in a way that we both enjoy and respect. And you can tell that from our recent acquisition of a brand called 𝐬𝐮𝐞𝐭 and its leader, Blake Gordon. He started out, I guess, gosh, he came out of the womb almost wanting to be an entrepreneur and had done everything from landscaping to sort of happening into this junk business and done very well in terms of building systems and processes and being so very passionate about, all that's going on with that brand. So we look for folks like him every day and all day to partner with to grow their businesses.
Yeah, and I think, I I don't think people really get that level of visibility and how many times a franchise becomes a franchise, right?
Right.
Because these are typically mom and pop brands that are identified by groups like Belfor Franchise Group. You know, they find a niche they want to add to their portfolio. They they do the due diligence, they learn about the financials and so forth, and eventually acquire brands then to transition into a full franchise brand and to add to your portfolio. So
Yeah.
it really is a win-win for the individual business owner being able to sell their brand and perhaps maintain a piece of equity at the same time,
Yeah.
and for Belfor Group to broaden their their portfolio of brands, right?
Yeah, yeah, you know what's funny? So back in 2019, before we acquired the brands I was a part of, Kim Dry and Enhance, Belfor Franchise Group had I think 5 brands. So we have grown incredibly over the last several years through that process, and it's through some operators out there really building the systems and the processes and things like that, and gaining some level of alignment with us. So we'll continue to acquire additional brands. We'll continue to leverage, man, all the resources. I mean, imagine we have over 300 employees that are part of the Belfor Franchise Group, and they're all focused every day and all day, right, on the betterment of our franchisees' business. So being able to bring more brands into that, leverage our resources, make successes for franchisor, franchisee, and Belfor Franchise Group.
So I want to make sure and highlight, you know, that it doesn't go unnoticed. You said since 2019. So the majority of your growth has happened. So, and several years of that was COVID, which, if you think about it, many businesses during that time were failing or flailing at a minimum. Whereas what I'm hearing, and I have also witnessed that the franchise industry, specifically home improvement, home services, has grown substantially over that time, which really at the end of the day speaks to how recession resistant these types of businesses are.
Yeah, yeah. So a couple of pieces on that. First, sort of thinking back to the beginning of that COVID piece, we didn't know what was going to happen. I mean, it was a time where I think everyone was just almost scared to death, and really trying to figure out the next steps. And one of the things that the Belfor Franchise Group did, and I was relatively new to the family at that point, but Sheldon Yellen and Rusty Amarante stood up and said, "Hey, look, we don't know what's coming down the pike, but what we're going to do across the systems for the Belfor Franchise Group is we're going to suspend your royalty payments to us, and we're going to
Oh,
suspend
wow.
any kind of loan payment you have for a period of time, several months, so that we can figure this thing out together, right? And so that we can make sure we exit the other side with grit, determination, and a great opportunity to be successful." And I got to tell you, dude, that brought so much respect from me, and I think from all the folks that were just recently over with that organization, that they helped us weather that storm. Now, the good part that came out of that too was, as you probably have heard, home services just went through a boom at that point, right? So many businesses, when people were actually able to get back into homes, had great years. For instance, our Enhanced brand, we've seen sales more than double since 2020 through all the efforts we're doing, and Bob DeGraff is doing, to diversify the offerings. And Enhanced does cabinet refinishing, by the way, but diversify the offerings and provide the right solutions to consumers. So across the board, we're seeing pretty substantial growth since that time.
So one thing that has really impressed me about the Belfor Franchise Group, and I really think is a significant differentiator and also a big benefit to prospective candidates that are exploring brands under your portfolio, is that you guys offer financing, a certain level of financing across all of your brands. So can you dive into that a little bit for me?
So as a family, we want to sort of stand beside our franchisees and invest in the business with them. In a couple of different ways, we do that. The first is through just the Quick Start program I mentioned before. We actually spend monies in markets to help them grow in that initial phase of growth. But the second thing is we actually do provide financing for our franchisees. They put part of the monies for their franchise free down with us, and we finance the rest over 3, 4, 5 years for them. Hopefully enabling them to ramp a lot quicker with us and for us, and keep some of those monies in their pockets. They can spend them on the marketing dollars where we're matching and whatnot as well.
That is so powerful. I can't tell you, financing and figuring out how you're going to fund a business investment is such a critical part of the process. And the fact that you guys help alleviate some of those concerns for your potential owners is pretty powerful. All right. So let's talk about brand consistency and maybe collaboration across your brands. So how do you maintain brand consistency across 14 different brands? And how do your owners perhaps collaborate in their markets with other Belfor brands that might exist?
Right. So on the consistency piece, it's really about finding on the front end the right franchisees who really buy into a system, because a franchise is nothing more than a set of proven systems and technologies and everything else that we sort of collaboratively get together and continue to roll out and enforce. So it's making certain we have the right franchisees in place to do those things. But then secondly, it's around making sure there's communication back and forth, right? So we have advisory committees on all of our brands that help us to provide the guidance and direction for our franchise networks. And then they communicate and disseminate the information down to our franchisees along with us to make certain we understand this is the path that we should be going down. One of the lesser talked about areas, and it's still relatively important, is the enforcement. So really going out there and just making sure that our franchisees are doing what we want and need them to do to protect the brands. So that's really what we do from a compliance or making sure the brand is consistently implemented. From a collaboration perspective, this is the fun part, right? So owning 14 brands and hopefully 15 to be launched sometime very soon, there are a lot of franchisees around the country that are part of our network. And there are even more Belfor property restoration folks in those same markets that are doing lots of business in the community. So we've put together what we term sort of market domination meetings, right? So if you imagine in a city like Atlanta, Georgia, we may have a couple of Belfor property restoration offices and then 20, 30, 40, 50 franchisees that are in the market operating independently. We bring them all together, and we had over 100 of these meetings last year alone. Bring them all together, and we talk about things like best practices, right? About customer service. And then most importantly about, okay, so how are we going to get people bouncing back and forth and referring people to one another? And from that, we had lots of great activity, lots of big deals closed through those efforts. And even a little bit of a sort of cross-pollination, right? Having some franchisees of one brand go, hey, you know what, wouldn't it be cool if I also own this brand in the same or a relatively close market? So market domination meetings have been a big part of how we look to grow the brands.
Yeah, I'm a franchise owner in a B2B space, and I think that collaboration amongst franchise owners, and I love your terminology of market domination meetings. That is one of the most understated benefits of franchise ownership. I mean, people talk about the term you're in business for yourself, but not by yourself. But many times they're talking about that direct relationship between a franchise owner and the franchise brand, right? But the collaboration that I'm able to have with other owners, I'm located in Florida, and we work with general contractors, and those general contractors, might work in South Florida. They might work in Tampa. So it's important for us owners and my system to be able to collaborate with one another and share best practices. So to me, that is such a huge benefit of the franchise system. And let me just preface of a good franchise system, because we all know there's some brands out there that aren't necessarily good franchises. All right. So you mentioned, or perhaps alluded to, a potential 15th brand. Is that serendipitous that something's in the works, or we just know that Belfor Franchise Group wants to continue its growth?
Yeah, so there's a brand that we have acquired that's called Helpful Heroes. It is a brand and a concept that's really going to be built around working with the emergency services providers, firemen, and things like that, and helping them help others, right? So all the things, handyman things that might be done around a house, we're allowing those firemen and others to be able to find those opportunities. Not yet a fully launched idea. I might get in trouble for even talking about this thing. But it is part of the network of franchises or offerings that we have, and we're just looking at how we sort of paper and craft that piece. But more to come. More to come.
I love it. I love it. More franchise brands for us to work with. Okay, so what is some advice that you would have for you're the VP of Franchise Development? You've worked with a lot of individuals that are exploring franchise investment as a potential opportunity. What advice would you give an individual that is just starting out exploring franchise ownership, and, you know, what they might need to be successful in this space?
So I'd say start out by educating yourself, right? And whether that's you online or you with a business consultant to really understand some of the options and opportunities are out there. But it really starts with knowing yourself, right? As you mentioned earlier, this is not for everybody, right? Now, everyone may have the thought that, they want to own their own business, but there's a lot more that goes into that. So making certain that you are of the mindset and are at the right time, right, to become a franchisee, and then also making sure that your support network, right, your family is there to help and support you as well, because that is really critical. Once you've educated yourself, I'd say get out there and kick some tires. Better understand what's out there in the available, what aligns with you, both from a work perspective and also from more of a lifestyle perspective. Because the businesses are very varied. You have some that are more semi-absentee, and those are far and different. But ones that you're going to be owner operator in, making sure you understand what goes on there. But really taking the time, dive in, learn. It's not for everyone, but as you understand the business and as you understand the resources available, you'll figure out what's right for you. And hopefully, that's one of our 14 brands.
Yeah, it truly is an education process. And that's what I tell people, that individuals I work with when they're starting out, is this is purely an education process. By no means are you anywhere near close to investing in a franchise. But one of the most important parts of that education process to me is the validation stage. And that is where individuals get to talk to other owners in the system to validate what they've learned throughout that education process, to be able to build their pro forma on what the financial opportunity really could look like based upon others' experiences. So how does the Belfor Group handle validation? Do you guys do group calls? Do you allow your prospects to reach out individually? I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah, so I think it's a couple of different ways that we handle the validation piece. First and foremost, we want to make certain that we understand the trajectory or the desires of that franchise candidate, right? We want to make sure that if we have someone who wants to build an empire, we connect them with others in our network or networks that are empire builders. If they are looking to be more just a owner operator type model, we want to make sure we connect them with those kind of people as well. So, after we've educated our the franchise candidates, we then can, say, hey, contact anyone within our franchise network. But these may be a few that you want to make sure, because they're a lot like you. In terms of the actual validation, it's really going to vary by concept. right? So for some of our upstart brands, and we do have 2 or 3 brands that don't have a huge network of franchisees, we have them talk with other Belfor Franchise Group or franchisees in the market, right? So they'll get a good sense for what Belfor Franchise Group really does to support their franchise networks and to grow that way. And for all the other brands that are larger, it's just anyone within those particular brands that we have them reach out to.
Dwayne, how do you define an empire builder? What does that mean to you?
Yeah, for me, he wants to come into a market and actually, just absolutely dominate it, right? So not stay physically on the truck, gets very quickly from working in the business to working on the business, and go from 1 truck to 2 to 3 to 5 over the course of the first several years.
And so many of your brands, I would assume, are home based business models. You really start out with a single truck in a market with an individual that is 1 or 2 individuals that are, driving around in that truck, making the service calls. And then as your business grows and scales, that's when you start to add more trucks, more personnel, and so forth.
Exactly. Yeah. So, I think system wide, because of the culture of Belfor Franchise Group and Belfor for that matter, we like people to really understand the business, right? So you can't necessarily understand unless you spend some level of time, not a lot, but some level of time in the truck or the van or in the field, right? So, but our hope is that our operators can learn, understand business, and then move beyond that to really grow to your point, to an empire builder.
All right, Dwayne, on a last note, this is going to put you on the spot here. So Belfor has 14 brands currently. So you have to have some favorites out of those 14
You're gonna get
brands.
me in trouble.
So what would you say are your top 3 favorites today and why?
Wow. So I'm trying to keep a job on this end too. I'd say I'm all about, so my way of sort of giving back and showing love is cooking, right? My wife burns water, so I do all the cooking in our house. So it's centered around the kitchen space. And one brand that actually I started back with Belfor Franchise Group with is called Enhanced Cabinet Refinishing. And they redo cabinet spaces. They're kitchen makeover experts. Lots of opportunities available for that brand around the country. Great ownership or leadership in Bob DeGraff, just a great opportunity. So that'd probably be number 1 because I love kitchens. Number 2 might be Blue Kangaroo Packouts. And that's a brand that if you can imagine taking a house that was under restoration, had been damaged and whatnot, and you sort of turn it on its head and you dump out all the stuff inside the home. Blue Kangaroo Packhouse takes all that stuff that's been fallen out of the box of the home, and they basically restored that information. So really good brand, great opportunities for growth there. And then maybe a tie for third would be the Patch Boys, because I've made holes in walls all over in all the homes I've ever owned. So quickly be able to patch those opportunities. And that's a very niche business for us. And then because I'm a bit of a neat person, 𝐮𝐭 Plus, because we're all about junk removal and light demolition work. That's our newest brand, by the way, that just is based in Louisville, Kentucky. It has 1 location there and 1 in Detroit, Michigan, or around our corporate headquarters. So I hate to give you 4, but those would be the 4 I'd say just sort of jump off the page as great opportunities for people out there trying to keep my job of supporting more than that. So.
No, I appreciate it. And I know I put you on the spot, but part of the reason I ask is it shows the breadth of opportunities, right? So many different, we've talked about restoration to kangaroo pack outs, which I mean, that's some heavy lifting there if you were to take everything that would fall out when you turn that home on its head. I mean, that is a lot of undertaking to something as simple as, patching walls. And people think some people may think that it would be hard to really make a big business out of patching walls. but it is a very niche business, and it's something that painters don't want to do. I mean, it's a job that many do not want to do. And there's a ton of growth potential and a lot of money to be had there.
Yeah, one of our franchisees and even some of the consultants say the riches are in the niches. And for many of our businesses, it is 100% true, right? 100%.
Absolutely. All right, Dwayne. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. I very much appreciate it. And, as I mentioned, there's a number of different franchise groups out there that own their own brands. Belfor definitely to me stands apart from many of them with respect specifically to the financing opportunity. I think that is just huge. I talk to a lot of individuals that are looking for assistance there. They may not have all the cash needed to put down on an SBA loan or what have you. So that in-house financing can just really be the difference between somebody starting a business and not. But aside from that, all of the systems and processes that you have in place. So any last words from you on Belfor Franchise Group?
No, I really just appreciate the opportunity to sort of share our story. We haven't been one to go out and seek a lot of publicity or talk a lot of times about this, but I love the fact that you're giving us sort of the opportunity to share, hoping to find opportunities to sort of become that next step for some people and maybe partner and grow. But just so excited, so thankful again for the chance to have a chance to chit chat with you.
Well, my pleasure. So for anybody that is interested in learning more about the Belfor Franchise Group brands, please feel free to reach out to me at Stacie@FusionFranchising.com. Thanks and have a great day.
Thanks for listening. Subscribe for more on the franchise life.